welcome to Parents Make a Difference. I'm your host, Josie PV. Do you have a child at home who has this feel of failure and is very anxious because that's the way they think? They're always worried about that. Well, today's guest is going to share some insight on how to help children who are going through that. I'd like to welcome today Gina Goldenberg, who is an educator and also a registered psychotherapist qualifying. Welcome to Parents Make a Difference, Gina.
Hi, Josie. Thank you for having me.
While we were, I have parents share with me how sometimes their kids get so stressed, if they don't get the mark that they wanted. They're so competitive and they have that feel of failure. And it's hard on a parent to see our kids going through that. And so, as an educator, you must have seen many kids go through that feeling of failure, that fear of failure. Um, what are your thoughts on how we can help these type of children?
Yeah, so these types of children are typically students or teenagers that want to do well. They want to perform at a very high level, and they're usually really, really hard on themselves. They've got perfectionist tendencies, tend to turn into anxiety. And there's a lot of different reasons why this can happen in a child. Like, why are they challenging themselves so much to the point that they're actually really scared of not doing well, of failing? So, as a parent, I think the number one thing that we can do to help our children when we're seeing this type of thing happen is to model a different behavior and really promote a growth mindset. I think as a parent, the more and more that you can teach your child proper ways to work through challenges, the better equipped that they are. So I think number one is teaching them acceptance, that it's okay to make mistakes, and that making mistakes is part of the growth process and the learning process. And it does not mean that you are going to fail. It doesn't mean that you're going to not meet the expectations that you put out for yourself. So I think the biggest thing a parent needs to kind of be cognizant of is the tone that they set and really model ways to grow and learn.
I love the fact that failure can also be seen as part of the journey. A lot of stories of overcoming, having success, whether it's in business, relationships, is learning that sometimes it's okay, it's okay to fail. It's failure is part of that, and like we fail our way to success. I've heard that sentence said, and trying to get that mindset, that growth mindset, it's just part of the journey. So I love that you said that because it's true. It is part of the journey, and if we don't see failure as such a grand thing, it's like, okay, no, this is what I need to go through in order to get to the next level, in order to move forward. What kind of hands-on strategies do you find we can give kids when they're having that meltdown, that like, they're so upset that they didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve? What would you suggest as a parent we do?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that we need to do if a child's in the moment, having a meltdown in the moment or having anxiety in the moment, is to recognize their emotion. So they're feeling a certain way for a reason, and I think it's really important to validate that emotion. So give that emotion words, and then walk them through it. Like, why are they having that emotion? What is it about the failure that has led them to believe that everything is falling apart? Right? And then we can identify different ways to reframe the experience. So we would take the failure, if you want to call it that, I call it a learning experience, and we reframe it and we find the positives to it. And then we go ahead and we reanalyze the feelings that are associated with the positive outcome. So the experience is the same. The failure, if you want to call it that, is the same. But when you can label it and look at it in a different light, then it manifests itself into a whole new experience. And with that, it allows the child to feel a whole new set of different emotions.
I read a book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. And
Yeah,
so, like you said, it can be just another learning experience. And if we take life as just a journey, then we're not so worried about that destination, having it all right. It's like, okay, this is part of my journey. I'm growing, I'm learning. Uh, I made mistakes, but I can work through it. I can reflect on it. I love that you said it's important to actually acknowledge the person's feelings because perhaps I didn't do enough of that. And I'm learning to do that, just acknowledge, have them talk through it. So perhaps parents out there, sometimes we do need to just have them just acknowledge what they're feeling because and validate it.
absolutely. I think another really great strategy, and it's kind of it kind of goes against what we would typically do, but um, it's kind of interesting when you speak to, let's just say, I don't know, a contractor, and they're doing a quote for a job. You hear them often say, "Measure twice, cut once," or they say things like they always plan for 20% of their supplies to be wasted. So they're planning for mistakes. So I think when you have a child and we're talking about goals and aspirations, plan the mistakes. Like actually talk about the things that could go wrong and how that actually fits into part of their plan. And even when that does happen, being able to reach their end goal is absolutely still a possibility. It's all, again, part of that process. So, planning for the mistakes, preparing them ahead of time for the mistakes is a really great strategy.
So having that expectancy so that it's not a complete surprise.
Yeah, and then it's not so scary, right? When that
Mm.
happens, it's like, oh, well, I was expecting this and I know how to handle that and I know the steps to move on. So it's not something to be scared of anymore. It's actually a welcomed experience.
I had a conversation with this professor who was renowned, and he would go speaking across around the world, and he was speaking to one of my sons because he was going to do some research for him, and he had said success is never a straight line upwards. He says success is up down up down up down up down up down, because there's sometimes we end up going backwards before we go higher up. And that's kind of what you know you're reminding me of when you just mentioned that if we help kids to feel that that is what most people, everyone in fact, goes through if they're willing to take the risk. If you take no risk, nothing gets done, and you won't fail because you're not taking any risks. So I do want our kids to be risk takers because that's the only way you can get ahead. To try.
Absolutely.
I when
Absolutely.
I when I was teaching, I'm not sure if it was grade 1, 2, but even now sometimes I have uh, this philosophy of trying to help them take risks and not worry so much if they failed or not. That I can't do it, I can't do it. They're so worried about failing, that fear of failing. And I says, you know what, we are going to bury the word I can't, and we officially do this little, you know, uh, ceremony of burying the word I can't. And it's I'll try. So to have that growth mindset, right? I'll try, and I'll figure out. And for parents too, we need to be an example of that. So that's why I love that you're here sharing that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Things were words like I should, I can't, what if. Those we call those cognitive distortions. So they're actually like errors in our thinking pattern. They're actually really, really negative thoughts, setting yourself up for failure. because you're setting expectations for yourself. And then if you don't meet those expectations, then you haven't done what you're supposed to do. So your internal thought process and the words that you use internally are very, very, very important. So that's a really good point to make as well.
Hmm. And so, what's coming out of our mouths as parents is important. Like, I know sometimes my own kids, maybe they've done something that if I was one type of parent, I'd be giving them heck. But then I'm growing as a parent and I'm realizing it's part of the journey. So I don't see it as so, grand. It's like, you know what? They're going to learn from that. It's part of the journey. If we learn through our mistakes, we don't learn necessarily through our successes. So this
Yeah,
is,
a lot of things that happen with children and teenagers who are experiencing fear of failure as well is something called analysis paralysis. So you sit there in thought and you're constantly thinking about everything that you could do or all the things that could go wrong, and you actually never make a move. So Josie, when you said earlier about taking a risk, it's the same kind of idea. It's like actually just jumping in and just doing it is a really, really big thing that those who are struggling with fear of failure have a very difficult time doing because they're just so stuck in the fear itself. So it's not, they're motivated. These are individuals that are highly motivated, very capable, want to learn, but they just have that one, block that's stopping them from moving forward.
we need that attitude of wanting to do more. That's how we advance. We need that attitude of competition. And not everybody needs to be that way, but we need some people to be like that. Um, it's also important that competition within ourselves, which gives us that fear of failure because we're competing with ourselves, wanting to push forward. So I think most people go through this feeling. Um, but I love that you said, you just kind of have to jump in. And even though you don't know what you're doing, you just got to try. Sometimes I reflect on, I had gone through cancer years ago, and that kind of was a wake up call for me. I was like, if this was my time to go, did I really do what I wanted to do? And that was kind of my push. It's like, even though I'm fearful, do it anyways. I mean, starting this podcast was very uncomfortable for me, but do it anyways. And thinking that at the end, am I going to say, I wish I did this, I should have, I could have, or am I just going to try to do it? And so I encourage us to give our kids that, that attitude of just do it anyways, just try. If you've got something in your heart that you want to do, just try. And giving that experience as a child, it could be from kindergarten age, just try. It could be from grade 8, grade 12, university, already in a career, ourselves as parents. So to push through that fear of failure. But I think um, there has to be a way where we're not always like, if that's the way someone thinks, how do they start enjoying life more? If they're always running for a goal and then always feeling that they're going to fail. So they're not even enjoying the journey. They're
Yeah.
always running and always got that fear. I don't know. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, there's no contentment, right? It's like you've accomplished things, you've done things for yourself, and you don't take a step back to actually enjoy what you've done. You're always on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And so this is learned. These behaviors can be retaught and relearned. And so things like a gratitude journal, mindfulness, um, remember how I said earlier about scheduling mistakes? Same thing. Schedule time to sit back and appreciate, schedule downtime. So you have to be again cognizant of everything because these are all learned, some of these are learned behaviors. Rewiring your brain to think and do differently actually will allow these thoughts that you have to go down a different path in a much more natural manner. So the more and more you think in a certain way, those become your automatic thoughts. So if you change the way that you think about things, those automatic thoughts become different as well. So the great thing about what you just said is that you can learn to be present. You can learn to be grateful. You can be learn to be content in the moment and not always thinking about the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing.
So you're saying one of the key points is to be more thankful in the moment, to be more present in the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because
And that,
fear,
mhm.
fear is always rooted in the future, right? Anxiety is fear, and fear is a thought of the future, always. So as soon as you can bring yourself back to the present, fear and anxiety are gone because there's nothing to worry about because you're in the moment, and in the moment right now is okay.
And I've heard gratitude journals often, and I do it myself, and I'm
Yeah.
encouraging others. Um, I do find that that brings you more in the present. I wrote it even in my book, Parents Make a Difference. But I found that at the beginning, I was doing it kind of artificial. It was just, I would say things, but I didn't feel it because I was still not there. But then I found that with time, I started to feel this overwhelming feeling of gratefulness and able to actually feel thankful and live more in that moment. And it's a process, but I'm so thankful that many people have talked about this grateful journal and just because you can write it down, but you could just say it in the morning as you wake up or as you're driving to somewhere or have your children talk about it. And it's so much more powerful than people think. Something so simple can be so
Yeah.
powerful.
Absolutely. You know what? It's actually really like it seems simple and it starts out as being very simple, but the more you do it, it's actually not simple at all. So I'll give you an example. Like I do that as well. So I started off with a gratefulness journal, and at the beginning, the things that I would write in it seemed kind of like obvious, right? Like I'm grateful for my health, and I'm grateful for this, and like the very like the big things. But then the more and more that you do it, it will become very, very, very repetitious unless you really sit back and think things like deeper on a different level. And that's when it becomes tricky. And that's when it becomes a lot more like insightful, when you really have to look deep within, like really delve into who you are as a person, your values, your morals, your upbringing, your abilities, like all of those kinds of things that might not be so obvious in the future. Um, uh, but it requires time and energy and effort. And then when you start to reflect on what you've written in that gratefulness journal, that's when things really kind of come together.
So perhaps writing it down is probably much more better than just citing it out. I'll work on
Well,
writing it down more because then it gives you more time to reflect, right?
yeah, you get
And
to
to
see how
think.
you've grown too, right? Like it's a really great reminder.
I know that I've heard even Oprah Winfrey say, if there's a day that's a hard day, and I might not know what to write down in what to be grateful for. She says sometimes I'll just say I'm just grateful for breathing,
Yeah,
being alive, right? And so you
yeah,
might have some of those days, and our kids might have a tough day, but yeah, it seems that gratefulness is appearing in many places. That it's a key. It's really a key, and sometimes we need to hear something 7 times before we actually start doing it, or 10 times. And I know that it's made a difference for me, and I hope that parents listening out there do it for yourself. See if it makes a difference for you, because I really do think it will. Um, have your kids start thinking of what they're grateful for, uh, and see what happens. See what happens. But thank you so much for joining us. You gave us some good information. We appreciate you joining us on Parents Make a Difference.
thank you so much for having me.
Parents, remember, you make a difference.